Okay. Thanks everybody for coming along. Um, the purpose of this meeting is to get a little bit ahead of the Connectathon and um, give you an idea of what we're going to be doing specifically in the Smart App launch track, um, what the goals of the Connectathon are, what the goals of this track are, and also point you to some of the tools that we're going to be using so that you can actually prepare to participate, so you can familiarize yourself with them, and you can also prepare anything that you're bringing along so that you can more easily connect up with the tools and also with other implementations that people are bringing along. So, first of all, I'd like to acknowledge and pay respect to the past, present, and future traditional custodians and elders of Australia, and also the continuation of our cultural and spiritual and educational practices of Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander people on the lands um, that you're calling in from today. Here it's the Turrbal and Yagara people here in Meanjin. My name's John. I'm going to be leading the smart track this time. Um, You're probably wondering where Sean is. Unfortunately, Sean has moved on to bigger and better things. So this time I'm just going to be by myself, but I do have some friends with me. So please, if you need anything at the Connectathon, come and see me. Um, we've also got Liam, Clinton, and Leonie coming along to the Connectathon as well. So there's going to be lots of people there to kind of have a chat to and get some help if you're sort of just trying to get up and running with the test servers or connecting to other implementations. So looking forward to it. So what we're going to be talking about today is what is the Smart App Track anyway? What are we actually trying to achieve at the Connectathon? And it is pretty specific activity, the Connectathon. So if you haven't been to Connectathon before, I'm going to give you a quick summary, but probably you have, and it's just going to be a refresher. We do have a number of breakouts we actually have a full schedule of breakouts for this Connectathon. I'm going to call out one in particular that is pretty closely related to Smart App launch, and I'll give you a preview of that. I'm also going to talk about who has already indicated that they're going to be participating in the Smart App launch track and where you can get the details of what they're bringing along and how you can connect to those things. Um, And we're also going to be, just covering off some of the basic tools you might need to participate. So the purpose of the Connectathon is to do actual testing of interoperability between Fire implementations. So um, we get different participants along to play different roles within an interoperability scenario. And the point is to have working software that you can connect to other working software, and we can actually check that interoperability scenarios can be executed. Now, that said, there's also lots of ways you can participate that are short of that, including just being an observer, including using it as a learning experience to get up to speed on some of the standards and the technologies. So that is all totally fine. But this is kind of the primary purpose of the Connectathon. So The interoperability scenarios that we cover off in the Smart App launch track are about extending the functionality of Fire-enabled systems using apps. So Smart App Launch is a way to authorize a third-party application to um, just admitting um, authorize a third-party application to connect to a Fire-enabled system and to be able to read and or write to that system through its Fire API. So you can have an app that has new functionality that the system doesn't natively have that can talk through the Fire API to that system and can be used for all sorts of different use cases, including just sort of an alternate user interface or visualizations or clinical decision support, etc., etc. So that's the broad Smart App launch theme. Within that, we also have a special interest in what we call structured data capture, which is really form-based apps. So um, for SDC form-based apps, we can actually feed um, a structured representation of a form into an app, and it can be rendered out as a data capture user interface within that smart app. And then that data can be saved back into the Fire-enabled system, or it can have um, Fire resources extracted out of it and saved back. And we've got lots of examples of these sorts of apps as well that will be at the Connectathon, including things like the Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander Health Check, also known as the 715, the Oz CVD Risk Calculator. So these are sort of examples of SDC-based apps. And of course, all of this is done in the context of Australian standards. So generally where all the participants are not only testing out Smart App Launch and SDC, but they're also testing out the use of AU Core alongside these other standards. Um, so the whole point is to accelerate the activity of developing and validating the standards. So instead of just sitting in a room and talking about what we want in standards, we actually try them out, and we have a diverse group of participants and independently developed implementations, and we use that as a way of finding problems and gaps and increasing quality of the standards. And we do this as an exclusively in-person event, very consciously. And we sit together for 2 days, and we have high bandwidth communication access to each other, and we learn together. And that seems to really work in this space. And we've been doing this successfully for many years now. So within the tracks, we'll generally have definitions of roles. So these are the different roles that a participant or an implementation could play within the interaction. So in the context of Smart App Launch, there's two main roles. There's a host and an app. So the host is generally like an EHR-like system that has a Fire API attached to it. And the app is the app that wants to sort of connect to that system and augment that system using that Fire API. So if you have, like, say, general practice system, that's likely to be a smart app host. If you have something like a cardiovascular risk app, that's likely to be an app. So we can actually get multiple different combinations of launching systems or hosts and apps, and we can make sure that the assumptions that the people who implemented those things made when they implemented fire were actually the same as the people who are implementing the applications on the other side. Now we also have two more roles here, which are specializations of the first two, and they're specifically for forms-based apps. So, and this is a slightly different requirements. If you want to launch um, a forms-based app, you may need to provide some additional information, like, for example, which form are you talking about? And as well, like if you're building an app that's specifically designed to render forms, well, then you need to be aware of structured data capture, specification, and the requirements that come along with that. So these are the main four roles that we have. And we actually have, I think, coverage of all of these within the people who participate regularly within these connectathons, which is fantastic. And I'll show you our evolving participant list in just a moment. Okay. And that moment appears to have arrived. So let me have a look. So the most important page you need to know about is this page here, which is the overall on the HL7 Confluence site. There is a page about the Melbourne Connectathon, which has pretty much everything you need to know to participate in the event. Like the first most important thing you might need to know is where is it and how do I actually get there? We have that. Although I can't actually see around. Yeah, so it's at Melbourne Connect. If you haven't been there before, it's within the University of Melbourne at Carlton, and depending on whether you live in Melbourne or otherwise, you might be just getting there from the airport, or you might be driving there. And there is actually parking nearby, and all that information is in this document here. And it also sort of shows what all the different tracks are. So there are four tracks if you're not already aware. And um, then we also have a schedule. So generally what happens is we all come in on the first day and you sort of sign in, and we have a main area, and we have a bit of an intro to the Connectathon there. And we'll have all the different tracks sort of providing an introduction and a pitch. And then there will be separate areas generally which each of the tracks will operate in. So most of the Connectathon is not people talking at you. There will be some talking at you in a limited way, but it's all in the context of um, you know, making sure that we can make more connections and helping you to make connections you want to make, rather than just being kind of a presentation-based event. So it's over 2 days. The day will be broken up by morning tea, lunch, and afternoon tea. The tracks will have their own sort of areas, and there will also be a breakout room, and there will be events happening in parallel to the sort of connecting activities, and they will be on sort of different areas of special interest or perhaps educational value. So, day one, day two, um, at the end of day two, we have a bit of a report back. So we like to, um, measure some progress over the 2 days. Hopefully, we can get different people connecting to each other, people that maybe haven't connected, or participants that haven't connected before, hopefully. And we usually draft a couple of people at least to just do a super quick share back of, this is what I did when I was at the Connectathon. And um, it doesn't have to be super professional or polished. It's really just trying to increase that engagement there. If you've been able to successfully connect your app to this server, well, why not pop it up on the screen and show everybody? So that's what we do at the end of the second day. So that's kind of the main connectathon itself. But each of the tracks also has its own page. So we've got a pretty comprehensive page here for the Smart App Launch track. Um, you can have a read through this. It contains a bunch of information about, the scenario that we're trying to test. And we also have our own kind of mini agenda within our track. So we don't have much in here by design. We really only at this moment have a bit of a demo of Connexus, which is a new smart app on the first day. And we have, as I mentioned before, a breakout session on the second day about reusable components within standardized data capture apps like Forms apps. So that's going to be a really interesting discussion. So a bit more information about the roles, and this page is really important. So this page is what we call participant capability page, and this is where we basically register all of our participants that are coming along to the track. So there'll be a mixture here of kind of infrastructure sort of participants that are provided either by Sparked or by CSIRO, just as sort of standing test infrastructure that just helps people to get up and running and test their apps or servers against something sort of public and central. And then we also have more specific participants relating to, commercial implementations or what have you. So, and we also have things like, for example, for smart health checks, we have an Inferno test suite there, so you can actually kind of um, get onto that and actually run a set of tests, for example, against your implementation to check that you fulfill the requirements for launching the 715. So there's other things like that as well. So far, thanks very much to MediRecord, InterSystems and the Digital Health Agency, who have already got ahead of the curve and put some details in here. The idea is that there's enough information in here, maybe not to just connect immediately, because often you need to register clients and that sort of stuff, but it should point you towards the person that you need to talk to get that client set up for you. So if you wanted to connect to MediRecords, for example, you could get into contact with with one of these people and get a client set up um, that and get up and running. So if you are planning to participate in this way in the Connectathon and you haven't yet, please um, log in and update this table. Or if you don't have a login or if you're having trouble with updating yourself, feel free to just send the details through to me and I'll be happy to update it for you. Okay, so coming back to our slides for a sec. So we've got lots of tools to help you actually. Um, these are a couple of the important ones. I'm going to give you a little bit of a demo of this. So one of them is what we call the Smart on Fire uh, app starter kit. This year it actually comes from Microsoft. This year we've kind of forked it because the Microsoft one appears to have kind of stopped working completely. So now we've got an AEHRC Smart on Fire app starter kit, but all it is basically uh, a React app, a minimal React app that is already set up to um, launch launch as a smart app. So you can actually plug this into test servers and launch it. And what it is, and in addition to just putting it into a GitHub repository, we've also set up this repo on StackBlitz, which is basically just a web-based IDE slash hosting thing. So you can actually have a fully functional smart app in your browser and also a URL that it's hosted on with zero effort just by clicking a link. And what you can then do is you can, for example, you can go to the Smart Launcher, which is another really handy tool if you're building smart apps. And the Smart Launcher is basically just a test harness and a fire server, right? So it's a fire server with some generic test fire data in it, and you can launch any given app with some sort of synthetic patients and providers and all the rest of it. So you can actually go to our StackBlitz thing and just copy this URL here, which is where your app is hosted. And you can just pop it into the launch URL and hit launch. Might have to click that. And with this test harness, if you don't select a patient and a practitioner before you hit launch, it'll kind of prompt you to select one along the way. So this is kind of simulating who you're logged in as in your EHR and the patient that you're seeing in the EHR. So in a real situation, this would probably already come through in the context from your EHR, but we're just kind of simulating that. And this is what the Smart on Fire starter kit looks like. All it is a really minimal app that just displays a patient's details. It actually doesn't just display a patient's details, it also allows you to change their name. But that's kind of the minimal sort of demonstration of the smart app functionality. So inside this app, it's got some configuration here. It's two really important things, a client ID and some scopes. So this is which client is this? And this is what kind of access are we asking for to the patient record. And once you've done this interaction, you get back a little client object which can make calls to the Fire API. but it can make calls to the Fire API loaded up with a token already that gives it permission to do so. So when you launch this, it'll automatically redirect over to the authorization server that the Fire API is configured with. It'll possibly make you log in. Then it will come back and it'll give you a token, and your app will then have that token to use in subsequent requests. So because it's using a library, um, the official Smart on Fire JavaScript library, most of that stuff is abstracted away from you, and you can just follow this pattern and profit. But as you can see, there's not really much to this app, and you can have a look there. So that's a really, if you're new to Smart on Fire and you just want to get something up and running and see how it works and modify it and play around with it, that's um that's your best bet, I think. Okay, this one here is a Postman collection. If you're not familiar with what Postman is, it's basically just an app that um, lets you compose HTTP requests and all the rest of it. Oh, go away. Um, so this is really just a set of requests that illustrate what happens in all the different steps of a smart app launch. So when I launched that app before, when I put that URL in and hit launch, there was a whole bunch of different interactions going on. Um, so another really important link is the spec of itself, of course. And if we go into say EHR launch here, um, we can we can see how an app actually interacts with the authorization server to actually get launched. And this is all looks kind of complicated, maybe a bit abstract. You can then go into Postman and you can see each of these requests, and you can actually run them and you can modify them. You can put them to your own Fire server, and you can actually get a feel for exactly how each of these steps works to um, sort of discover the authorization server that the Fire server is using, to make a request to be authorized, to get redirected back with an authorization code, to exchange that authorization code for a token, and then finally to use the Fire API with that token as authentication. So hopefully that also helps to if you're on your learning journey. Um, so there's those tools, but on this page, there's even more tools actually. So if you scroll down, there's a bunch of links down here, and additional test servers. We've also got links to the AU Fire test data if you want to load some AE core compliant test data into your system. And yeah, so just have a look at that, and we'll also be helping you on the day as well. So you you can make the most of the time before the Connectathon by getting up to speed with some of this stuff, but all the help's going to be there on the day as well. So don't get too worried. As I mentioned before, we're going to be having a breakout on the second day, in the second quarter of the second day. And what the breakout is going to be about um, is okay, so we can have these forms-based apps. We can make standard questionnaires that define the forms. We can have tools that render those questionnaires. We can save all that back into our apps, into our EHRs. But what's the next step? So, um, we're obviously going to have a lot of common elements within these forms. So, for example, many forms may capture patient demographics, or they might capture, say, medical history or something like that. And we've already done a lot of work in things like AUCDI to capture all these common data elements that we use in healthcare. So this discussion is about what what is the next step to sort of um, reusing components within these forms, making them discoverable. On what levels can we reuse the definitions, the user interfaces? So we're going to be ranging broadly over this topic, so it should be fun. Okay, that comes to the end of the slides I had. I probably just want to pause at this point and see if there's any questions. And then following that, I might just see if there's anyone on the call who wants to kind of introduce themselves that are going to be participating. Any questions? Okay, well, it must have been oh, hang on, let me just check the chat. No, literally no questions. It must have been a spectacular presentation, just 100% coverage. Okay, so yeah, so we've got so far we've got Medi Records, the agency, and InterSystems on the on the participant capability matrix. We've also got a couple I know are going to be participating that are not on the table, but there's still time. Did Neil or Sanjeed, did you guys want to just quickly introduce yourselves and talk about what you're going to be bringing along to the Connectathon?
John, Sanjeev here. I'm the product owner at Many Records for all things APIs and connectivity related. I'll probably hand it over to Neil, and Josh is here as well. So Josh and I are going to be in Melbourne for the Connectathon. What do you, Josh?
Hey, all, I'm Joshua. I'm a software engineer at Meta Records. I guess I'll be present at the Connectathon. Obviously, we're going to be the server side for Smart App Host. But yeah, if you have any questions or anything you need from us, just let us know. And yeah, I guess I'll
Just
pass it over to Neil.
just to add, John, we have been able to work with the information that's already there in the Confluence page, and we have been able to set up some of the apps. Josh, if I'm not mistaken.
Yeah, we've managed to set up I think most of them on the Meta Records system. It's just all about just making sure the pre-population works.
Fantastic. So how can if I have an app, how can I get my app launched off your test server at the Connectathon?
I think just Sanji, do you want to go ahead? Oh, if not, just get in
Just
contact
with
with
Sanjeev
Neil.
or yep.
Yeah,
Sorry, I
just
didn't
get in
mean to
contact
talk
with one
over
of
it.
us.
Sorry, I won't
Just
be
get in
at
contact,
I won't
with
be
one of
at
us.
Connectathon. Yeah.
But yeah, we'll set up the client ID, and then make sure we have all the necessary details in order for you to be able to launch with our Fire server, and I guess we'll go from there.
I think just to add to Josh's point, I mean, other than the apps mentioned there, if there's any other app, if we can have the details earlier, it'll be better. If we can have this week, we can have it set up and ready for Connectathon.
Because we'll need a couple of things, the details of your app, and you also need to configure your course host, and the clearing the client details is quick. but there's like an hour lead time if we need to configure a new course on the day. So Sanjeev said it's better uh, during the week or earlier.
Okay, great. Thanks very much for that. Okay, I can't see Nicole from InterSystems, but I'm sure she is actually a bit of a Connectathon veteran by now, so she'll be ready to help you on the day. I can see Phil. Phil, did you want to introduce yourself and talk about what the agency is bringing?
Can you hear me?
Yep.
Okay, yeah, mine's Philip Wolf. I'm from the agency. We've developed a smart forms app, container, and app. The container sort of can take any questionnaire and present it in a format that allows users to enter data. It's connected to any clinical information system, or should be launched from any. Well, sorry, I shouldn't say should. It must be launched from any clinical information system to go and retrieve patient data, patient demographic information, the practitioner, and a few observations. For the particular chat form, we're also working with Liam at CSIRO to work on the 715 and get that also in there. So you've got a choice of apps, a choice of forms that you can fill in. I'm hoping to also touch base with best practice and potentially many records as well.
Okay, great. And is it possible to launch smart apps from your platform, Phil? And
So
how do we
yeah,
make that happen?
So we've got a dummy CIS. It's very well, just a page that allows you to launch other people's apps from that particular platform. So we just need the registration details to put into the database, and then we can launch those particular apps from there. And also has an auth and fire endpoint as well, so it allows you to retrieve certain data as well. So we do have a bit of both to be able to play.
And I'm just trying to remember, have we had a demo of launching the 715 off that previously?
Not previously. I don't think we did, Liam. Did we? I can't remember now. Otherwise, yeah, we're happy to do a quick demo. And I think we had a few little teething issues. But no, I think we can probably do that demo as well as the chap one.
That would be awesome.
No worries.
Okay. Is there anyone else who is coming along and participating that wants to just poke your head up now and just introduce yourself and talk briefly about how you're going to be participating?
I'm
I
happy to introduce as well.
James John. Go ahead, Charles, please.
All right. Thanks, Alan. So we've tested in previous Connectathons. We have a generic smart app launcher that we can redirect the flow to any other app that is not Fire enabled, with our launcher acting as an intermediary doing data translation on the fly between a Fire server and a non-Fire API. I don't think we need to retest that. I think we're pretty comfortable with that. But what we will bring this time around is a patient summary composer, if you like, or assembler, where we can launch that from a Spartan Fire host. It will then pre-fill the subject and the author based on the context that was launched from, and allows us to call back to the Fire server to add Fire resources into a template patient summary in the various sections, so that at the end we can produce a fully composed patient summary that we can share via Smart Health Link with others. So that's what we're hoping to test end to end, from the launch all the way to the sharing and then the receiving of that shared patient summary, and test that it's conforming to specifications too.
Okay, that's great. So you'll be potentially launching that on the test servers, or also getting in touch with the people who've got servers there on the day to see if we can get clients and launch off those servers as well.
Yeah, so essentially instead of using the built-in dollar summary to generate patient summary on the server side. What we're allowing a user to do is to start with a template and add the resources that they want to include in the patient summary
Okay, sounds
interactively.
interesting.
Yep.
All right. Alan, did you want to say a few
Yeah,
words?
thanks, John. Just quickly, yeah, we're bringing familiar to Smart on Fire apps, the CVD calculator that was developed by CSIRA. We're hosting it, as you all know, for the FAT Foundation. And the other one is this MIMS app. It's a very interesting app utilizing the MIMS clinical decision support services. It preloads the patient's prescribed medications, known allergies and conditions, and just runs the tests and see if there are any duplicate medications or bad combinations between allergies and medications. And it gives back very extensive information, being a clinical decision support system. So it's an interesting app. And we have a new iteration with some new features and more robust, and we'll be happy to test it with whoever will be interested.
Okay, great. So two different Smart on Fire apps. I'm thinking we could even get two new rows of our participant table out of that.
Absolutely.
And
Tomorrow we're hosting the second one, and we will be updating it it's on our task list nowadays.
yeah, that's great. Thanks very much. So that sounds like a really good start. And the best part about it is that we've got um, diverse roles being filled. So we haven't got everybody on the server side or on the app side. We've actually got lots of potential connections to make there. And yeah, I'm really looking forward to the event. And like I said, we'll be filling out that capability table between now and then, and people will be preparing. But please feel free to reach out to me if you have any questions between now and then. Brian, did you have a question?
I guess, yeah, just Brian Fosselwet from Microsoft. Sort of just the contribution that I was going to be doing when I came along.
Oh yeah, sure, go for it.
Yeah. Yeah, so I'm not providing an app host or a client app. I guess people know that I've been running the Firepath lab with the Forms engine. So to go and test out forms and everything else in there. There's an experimental space that I've been messing with David Hay and with Health Samurai to provide like a smart messaging um, communication channel so that you can drive the forms engines to retrieve and send content, whether it's questionnaires or responses, from hosts. So it's another thing. So if people wanted to have a look at what that's doing, I can share some links to where that stuff's going on. I'll drop that in the chat. But yeah, I might be messing with David Hay around with that. Could be interesting to others.
Yeah, that sounds great. Okay, did I miss out anybody else? I'll see if I can add the details of that to the Confluence page for you, Brian. Okay, Heath.
I guess my main interest is around the component library stuff, John. So I guess I'm happy to have a chat with you after this slightly if there's anything that we need to prep for that between now and then.
Sounds like a good idea. Yep. Okay. Well, I'm available straight after this, so maybe we should do that. All right. Um, any other closing thoughts? Otherwise, we can give you a few minutes back, but yeah, have a look at the materials, reach out with any questions, and we'll hopefully see you all at Melbourne Connect on the day. Thanks very much, everybody.
Thanks, John. See ya.
John, thanks everyone.
Thanks all.
Thanks all.
See ya.